Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can all hear me. I'm Simon Illingworth, Chief Operating Officer. I'm just covering for John Melbourne, our new Chief Exec, who's not quite with us at the minute. He might be joining us shortly, so if he does, I'll hopefully hand over to John. But as it is, you've got me this morning. We've got a number of guest speakers this morning. We've got Jess Appleyard, who's the Specialty General Manager for Therapies, Sexual Health and Interpreting Services, and she's here to give a talk later. I'm also down as a guest speaker. You've got me twice, and I'll be talking about industrial action as well. So just before we get on to those areas, I'd like to run through a couple of general updates. We've obviously today is Remembrance Day, and we've had a number of events today in the organisation to recognise that. There was an act of remembrance on each of our three sites this morning just before 11 o'clock, and I wanted to thank the chaplaincy and spiritual pastoral team for that. We also had in the first week of November, we were honoured to host the Ashfield Festival of Remembrance here at the hospital. The festival was a shared collaboration between Together in Ashfield, CIC, the Further Education College and the hospital. And for those that were there, they'll know the day began with the service at St Mary's Cenotaph in Sutton Ashfield before guests joined us at the Kingsmill Hospital for a series of presentations and refreshments. At the time, we're proud to welcome Ed Attenborough. He's the High Sheriff of Nottingham, Lieutenant Colonel Keith Spears, and Nora Senior, Vice Lord Lieutenant of Nottinghamshire, who joined us alongside colleagues from across Trust. So that was a really good session. This year's theme focused on remembering and acknowledging the local people who supported the war efforts from a medical perspective, which I think is a fitting reflection of the NHS heritage. And for those that are eagle-eyed, you'll notice that across the hospital site we've got a number of Tommies on display, and they're created and donated by the Further Education College staff. So they're things to look out for. Flu vaccinations, probably worth updating you on where we are with flu. We've had some really good progress across hospital in terms of people getting vaccinated. We're up to 35.6% of our colleagues here at Sherwood have now had their flu vaccine. And 34.7% of our frontline colleagues are also now vaccinated. So if you want to stay fit and healthy this winter and importantly protect your family, it's really easy to do, and there's still an opportunity to get vaccinated. Obviously, a huge thank you to the occupational health team and peer vaccinators who are doing an incredible job with this, and thank you to everyone who's taken the time already to get vaccinated. There will be some dates put in the chat for those that still want to get vaccinated, with some clinics taking place around the organisation, and there'll also be a list of peer vaccinators and more clinic days which we can share on the live chat. Again, this probably won't be a surprise to many of you. The National Staff Survey is out. We've had just under 3,000 colleagues have already shared their thoughts about what life's like working here at Sherwood Hospitals. I know they'll have told us already about the things we're getting right and areas where they think we could improve, but obviously the more people we can get responses from, the better. So I'd encourage you to complete your staff survey where you can. Obviously, goes without saying, without hearing your voices and your thoughts, we couldn't continue to make the improvements that we want to across the organisation and make this a great place to work. The good thing about the National Staff Survey is that we make it as accessible and easy as possible, and it's either a link in your inbox, it's waiting for you, or there's paper copy in your department with your name on it. And again, we can put the details in of how to fill in and where to return your staff survey to. The paper surveys will be dropped off in your department or can be posted to your home if you're on long-term leave. But if you want to do that, please speak to your manager who can help arrange that. And again, we'll put some more information in the live chat. The final update for myself, again, this is around our dementia choir. People will know Vicky McClure, one of our is renowned for our dementia choir for a special performance at Manfield Civic Centre this November, and this will end with a performance by a local dance company, Sid Studio. The evening's been kindly organised by the Bluebird Care Mansfield and Ashfield, and promises to provide a musical journey filled with joy and laughter, a chance to celebrate those living with dementia while raising vital funds for Sherwood Forest Hospital. So if you want to take part in that, I would recommend going along. And it's taking place on Saturday the 15th of November from 4:30 p.m, and tickets for the event cost £10. And again, we can put some details in the chat for those people that want to do and go to that. That's probably all I had to do in terms of updates from the organisation. I think we can probably move straight on now to our guest speaker, Jess, who's here to talk about the Trust Interpreting Services.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm the SGM for Interpreting Services. If you bear with me just 1 second, I will share a very quick slide. First of all, can everybody see that okay? Because my view is quite small. See if I can make it a bit bigger.
Not
Bear
sure we
with me
can
one
see that
second.
yet, Jess.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be sharing. Bear with me. Bear with. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it now. Sorted. Thank you. So what I'm here to talk about today is the Trust Interpreting Services. So there's a few different things I want to speak through, which are the common challenges that the bookings team face, examples of delays. So this is delays to patients, treatment, or diagnostic pathways, in order to get them seen through the organisation. The alternatives to face-to-face booking. So I'll run through this in a bit more detail, but as a trust, we are using face-to-face more often than our alternative options, which we just need to try and shift that focus on. Some remember to's for those that do send requests through to the bookings team, and the financial impact, which we have to touch on to sort of demonstrate the direction we want to move forward in terms of being an interpreting service. So the starting point is the common challenges. So one of the challenges the team that book face is request forms not being submitted, or submitted a little too late. So the bookings team is a team of two lovely ladies that work 8 till 4 Monday to Friday. There's been a few instances where requests have been sent through on a weekend for first thing Monday morning, and obviously they're quite difficult to source. What's then happened in some instances is patients been cancelled and then rebooked, obviously affecting their pathway, affecting their treatment. So the alternative to that is to have a on-demand telephone. So if there is a last-minute request because of a last-minute booking, bearing in mind we've got utilisation focus, then perhaps we could use on-demand telephone rather than a face-to-face request. The second one is rare languages. So there are quite a few common languages, but there are a handful of languages that are quite difficult to source. One of those examples is Mandarin. Hebrew is quite difficult to source as well. Again, in some instances, patients can have an alternative language. So we encourage people who are sending a request through to, if there is a common language, populate that on the document, because sometimes they're a little bit easier to source. And again, there has been occasions where patients have been cancelled or changed due to not having an interpreter available. Interpreting team not be informed of any changes or cancellations. So we're just asking that if there are changes or cancellations to a patient's appointment, can we just make sure that we're feeding back to the two ladies that book the interpreters? The reason being is because depending on how close it is to the appointment, if we're not informed or it's within 24, 48 hours, we are still charged as an organisation. One such example resulted in £720 charge for 3 BSL appointments, which is quite a significant amount of money. Another thing to consider is timesheets. that are submitted for payment. So we're encouraging anybody that signs any interpreter timesheets to make sure that they're putting in the correct time, they're signing it and submitting it or finalising it there and then whilst you're with the interpreter. The reason being is we want to make sure that there's no fraudulent claims going through, because obviously that's a charge to the trust, and we need to make sure that we're doing things the way that they should be doing. We have had a recent instance where there has been some fraudulent claims made, and we've had to open those up with providers to talk through what's happened, why it's happened, and ensure that we're reimbursed for charges that have been sent that are incorrect. The next one is invoice discrepancies, which kind of supports the timesheets focus. So we do run through our invoices each month. So when they come through, we do raise datexes, which I'm sure some of you may have seen, to highlight if there is any overrun appointments, to make sure that that's legitimate claim and the appointments have overrun and for what reason. Which again leads into the last common challenge there, which is there are a few areas that have consistent overrun appointments. So this isn't just clinic areas, it's across the board. So just bear in mind when you're sending the booking through, if you do think you need more time, then just have that conversation with the bookings team and see if there's anything we can do to support that, because we are charged for the time that we use, or think about how we might do things differently. So again, using telephone or alternative options might be a good way to go. All of these common challenges have, like I've mentioned previously, led to a series of delays. One such delay was an oncology patient. So this was a rare language difficulty. So we had a problem sourcing one of the rare languages, and I actually think it was Mandarin that was the problem, which resulted in the patient's cancer diagnosis or treatment being delayed, because the team were quite adamant they wanted a face-to-face, but we were struggling to source that. And when we did source it, it got moved or cancelled for whatever reason, and it was quite difficult. So ultimately, the conversation did happen via telephone to make sure that the patient wasn't further delayed, but that could have been done much earlier. So it's just bearing in mind we do have a telephone option. So if it is appropriate, then go down that route, especially for a rare language. A similar one is there was a inpatient that needed an appointment or a procedure to be done in radiology, and the interpreter was running late, which then delayed. The interpreter then cancelled. So this isn't an example of a delay within the trust. It's an example of an interpreter delay, but ultimately it impacted the patient. So again, this was one where they used the telephone service instead, and the patient managed to have the procedure done and then subsequently went home. And again, the final one is consent for surgery. There are instances where patients have had to wait in order to consent because teams aren't happy with the level of consent by telephone. It's effectively the same conversation. So we're encouraging that if we are having difficulty sourcing or we're having problems with interpreters, then just bear in mind that alternative option of virtual rather than physical face-to-face, because it always helps. Which leads us on to our alternatives. So we do have the on-demand telephone interpreters service, which there is on-demand numbers for. So I think in all outpatient areas, the bookings team have made some little leaflets that are hopefully in consultant rooms or on reception desks or within bookings teams, which highlight the common languages for your routine bookings, and how to get the on-demand service. So the numbers you dial up and how you reach that. Pre-booked telephone, so you can send a booking request through, but instead of having face-to-face, you can put telephone, or if you need face-to-face, there is a little box to say you can pick telephone as an alternative. These ones are perhaps better for your rarer languages and your priority patients, so your urgents or your patients that meet the criteria. But again, if we're struggling to source, it's always nice to have the backup of a pre-booked telephone option. Um, we do translation and information leaflets. So one thing we are quite keen to work with areas on is for the more common languages and the more common procedures or appointments or treatment options, creating some information or translation documents with those areas so they are reusable. So for example, if there's a radiology procedure or an endoscopy procedure, that the general flow is quite straightforward and quite similar to every other patient, then we can translate that into one of the common languages, and that can be something that we use to support our conversations with those patients, to not require a face-to-face or to support a telephone option. The fourth and final option is video interpreting. So, as an organisation, this is on pause at the minute because of the complexities around getting the right equipment in and making sure that everybody's had the training and everybody knows how to use the system. Now, one thing we are in the process of doing is trying to reach out to some suppliers to see how we might make it work for both of us. So, how can we include video interpreting, which gives us that face-to-face alternative? We are doing a bit of a tender exercise where we're going out through procurement to get some people come in. So we will be reaching out at some point for people to come and demo what providers have to offer in terms of a video interpreting solution. But again, it kind of supports the financial impact. So the more money we're able to save through doing telephones or doing things slightly differently, the more we'll be able to repurpose into something like video interpreting, which is perhaps more where we want to go in terms of direction as a service. Remember twos. So this is just a reminder to anybody that does book. So complete all sections on the new version of the request form. So we are getting some requests come through still on the old version or with bits missing. So to save the back and forth between the bookings team, just remember to fill in all the sections. Inform if there's any changes to patients' appointments or cancellations to avoid the charge, but also to make sure that we can repurpose that interpreter either to another appointment or to the alternative appointment that's been booked. The alternatives, so as I've just talked through those alternatives, and video will obviously also be on there when we're up and running with video interpreting. Signing the timesheets, so they do have digital and paper. Just make sure that it's clearly documented, that you've signed it, there's a time, and the interpreter submits it whilst it's still there. And if there is any questions about anything whilst you're filling in the paperwork or queries about the rarity of the language, just call and ask the team for help because they're always at the end of a phone and they're always happy to support and guide whoever needs or wants it. So the last slide is about the financial impact. So over the last 6 months, the trust has spent almost 46,000 on face-to-face interpreters. If we look at that compared to our telephone, it's about 5 times higher. So as a trust, we're spending 5 times more on our face-to-face bookings than we do on our alternative options, such as telephone or translation documents, which is quite a significant difference. The overspend for the service is around about £2,000 per month. So if we saw less face-to-face and we did more telephone, that would reduce that overspend to be within budget, and it would create us a little bit of saving in order to repurpose some money towards developing the service forward. The overall cost of interpreters since April, so for the last 6 months, has been 66,000. Last year it was 112. So at the minute we're sort of trending upwards to be spending more this year than we did last year overall on interpreters, and the biggest chunk of that is on face-to-face. If we did more telephone, we will save around about 25,000 pounds per year, which, as I've already mentioned, can be repurposed into the video element, so you still have that face-to-face interaction, but it's just done virtually. I'm not sure if there is any questions in the chat, but that's it from me. I would like to, as a last sort of hurrah, say that there has been a real effort from everybody to change the narrative in terms of interpreters, and we have seen a saving, we have seen a reduction, but we just need to keep pushing that forward. So that's why I was here today, to just talk through what we need from you, and more importantly, what we can do for you. So if there are anything we can help with, then reach out and we can support. But thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jess, for that. There was one question in the chat, which was, is it an option to look at handheld devices such as Vasco or Pocket Talk?
That's a good idea. And it might be that we have to include that in our tender exercise as some of the alternatives. But if people are interested in that, we can absolutely include that in the demos and reach out to departments that want to sort of trial that and work through what we can do.
Okay, thanks. So I guess, listening to your presentation there, I think there's a couple of messages that our interpreting services is a very valuable service for patients and staff. I think there's alternatives to face, which we need people to think about. And if we pick the right alternative, it might get faster service and better service for us. So that's really important. And I think, we have to remember this isn't a free service. We spend a substantial amount of money every year providing this. So it's just asking people to think carefully about what they're requesting and how they're requesting interpreting services.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
lovely. All right, thank you, Jess, for that. If there's any other questions, I'm sure we can share them with you outside of here.
Thank you.
So I'm up next with about industrial action. This won't take too long. Happy to take questions in the chat. And we've also got Debbie Kearsley here, who's our Deputy Director of People. So she's available to answer any questions as well. Okay, I'll just talk through where we are with industrial action, though. For those that don't know, we're scheduled to have another strike of resident doctors between 7 a.m. this Friday to 7 a.m. on Wednesday, the 19th. So it will run over the weekend. We obviously recognise as a trust and understand the importance of good pay and conditions for us all, as both an organisation and as individuals, and we respect your right to take industrial action. We also recognise and thank the non-medical and admin workforce and those who often step up and help to support in clinical services during these difficult times. I know often sometimes it can feel like we overlook all the other additional people who often step up to help. So I just wanted to say thank you in advance of that. Hopefully this won't be a surprise, but clearly we're very, very close now to Friday. But over the last few weeks, we said there was no additional annual leave allowed to be booked that wasn't already booked and scheduled. And that's just to make sure that we can continue to run services as effectively as we can. Your operational teams, so your service general managers and your division leadership teams, I know we're currently working hard to develop plans to ensure we cover services safely and effective. And there's another meeting this afternoon on that. We have got a bit of complicating action this time round, which is there's very clear requirements nationally that we have to maintain as much elective activity as we can, which is adding some complexity to planning. Now, for those that remembered last time, we did cancel quite a substantial amount of elective work last time, so we're having to put plans in place to try and avoid doing that this time. And I think, as always, we'll always prioritise cancer and urgent appointments first. What I would say, I guess, at this point, is if you've got any questions on how the strike might affect you or your service, initially, please speak to your line manager on that. But during the strike, we're having daily meetings to manage and ensure the organisation is safe and able to carry out its work. I think, for those that have been around long enough, will know that this isn't the first time we've had industrial actions. We've got well developed plans for how we handle this. But I think this time round, there is a little bit more pressure in the system around maintaining elective work. So I've been very clear with the operational teams that we shouldn't go into this looking to cancel elective activity, but that is adding and will add some additional pressures in for clinical teams, which I just wanted to recognise. Deb, did you want to add anything that I've covered?
No, thank you, Simon. Afternoon, everybody. So yeah, Simon's just gone through in terms of the planning stages, and we recognise and value everybody's input into the planning and also to the work that will be conducted on the day. If individuals want to access any well-being services during the industrial action, then you can visit the intranet site. All of our well-being offers are available. We have been speaking to the BMA and it's been confirmed there isn't a picket line, so there will not be a picket line here at Kingsmill or at Newark or at Mansfield Community, so there'll be no picket line during the industrial action days. And then if anybody has any questions, there is an intranet page which has a number of FAQs in relation to the industrial action, so if anybody does have any questions, they can visit that site and hopefully the answers will be there. If not, speak to your line manager or you can contact a member of the People Directorate.
Okay, thanks, Deb, for that. That brings us to the conclusion of our team brief today. I hope there's been some useful things in there. I would just like to know, I know John, our new CEO, is supposed to be here today. He's unfortunately had to be called off to a national meeting with CEOs on the upcoming industrial actions. We couldn't be here today to do that, but I'm sure next time you'll be able to meet him. So I know there's more questions going in the chat, which we'll do our best to answer, but I think we'll finish a little bit ahead of time. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time round. Bye.